All right, good morning. Welcome back, everyone. We had a great day yesterday hearing from our standardization executives, the awardees from the DSP Awards program, Mr. Colson with the S Series, and others. And welcome you back for another day where we'll focus on advancing technology and standards in a digital world. And to kick us off on day two, I welcome Ms. Philomena Zimmerman, research scientist from Stevens Institute of Technology. Phil serves part-time as a research scientist with Stevens Institute of Technology as part of the Systems Engineering Research Center. She continues working in similar areas as she did before she retired in 2022 after nearly 40 years supporting the Department of Defense. Her OSD effort was largely focused on the leadership of digital engineering, including development of the digital engineering strategy. She specializes in modeling simulation and use of model-based techniques to support the full range of systems engineering and capability delivery functions. Her background includes program management, virtual testing, and technology adoption support to U.S. Navy, U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, as well as the Office of the Secretary of Defense. She has received numerous awards and citations, including the National Defense Industrial Association's Ferguson Award for Systems Engineering Excellence. She's a member of the International Council of Systems Engineers, National Defense Industrial Association, and American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. She consults in digital transformation of program and technical processes and applications, including systems engineering and acquisition practice, and curriculum enhancement for speed digital transition. Without further delay, please welcome Ms. Phil Zimmerman.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is change that bio because that was really tedious, even for me. Okay, good morning. Oh, no, you're all right. Look, I am an E, which means I draw life from the crowd. So if you want this to be a little more energetic, I'm going to try that again. Good morning. Much better, right? It'll save my husband, it'll spare my husband. Okay, so I want to talk about something a little different today. I'm still going to talk about standards in a digital world. But we've been working in the digital world, in the organization and cultural world about trying to set a demand signal. Trying to set a demand signal in the other areas that would use digital, right? Because frankly, as a digital person, as an engineer, I'm getting tired of pushing this worm into other areas, right? And I use that pushing this worm in front of a 4-star general, and he was a little appalled. But because after a while, it gets ugly, right? So I want to try to set a demand signal. And in order to do that, I want to be invited into another person's world. And so what I'm hoping to do is to invite the standardization community into my digital world. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to try to give you an idea for what it's like to operate in a digital world and what it is we're looking for. Because I don't need to be a standardization expert. That's why you're here, right? I need to have help in figuring out how I'm going to do what I need to do, which is all still emerging. So let's go on this journey together. Point it there. Point it. There we go. So I come from the CERC. This is the only advertising slide I have in my deck. I actually counted them last night. The CERC is a university-affiliated research center. It is the only distributed UARC that exists. And right, if you count all those, there's 26 of them. So we are 26 universities across a variety of research areas, predominantly in digital, predominantly in culture change. There is some cyber in there, et cetera. I would encourage you to go to, I think it's circuarc.org. You can see all the research that we do, et cetera. I primarily work with people from Stevens Institute of Technology, which is where the CERC is headquartered. I also do some work with the Air Force with Georgia Tech. So I encourage you to check us out. Our program manager in R&E is Miss Nadine Geyer, who I think you're going to hear from later today on the MOSA standards. And so any questions about how to reach out to us, you can grab there, and that's enough of the advertisement. Let's try to do this again. Okay, so yesterday, I shamelessly stole two of Tom Sim's slides. You heard from Tom yesterday about standards. You heard about getting involved. right? You heard about needing to make sure that you participate, that you are there in the standards. It's no different in the digital world, and I need you to be here in my world, right? To help me navigate my way to the standards that I can build my infrastructure on, to the standards that I can do my data exchanges on, to the world of well, I'll use the word, it's becoming an I word for me, right? To the world of interoperability, which, by the way, I think in a digital world, in a digital development world, is not as critical as people might think. I don't need to have my tools immediately interoperate with each other. We have at least one warfighter in the room, right? Nobody's shooting at me on a daily basis, right? So I need to be able to exchange data. That's a little different phrasing than interoperability, right? How do I think about that? I need your expertise to help us think about that. So certainly we need you to get involved, right? We need people to be involved. And however, people like myself who worry now about cultural change and organizational change and process change, however we can move that message up, you need to let us know, right? Let us know how we can help, because we're on the using end of your standards. So I'm going to talk a little bit about digital transformation. For those of you, well, I'll save it for the next slide. Digital engineering transformation. If Phil Zimmerman were to define engineering, digital engineering today, here's the way I would define it. Engineering as the application of science and mathematics to solve a problem. Think about that for a minute. Doesn't say what type of engineering. It doesn't say what type of problem, right? Can I apply science and mathematics and everything that comes with it to solving a problem? And I want to do it computationally. If I were to define it today, that's how I would define it. So when you think about digital engineering, even though in the upper right-hand corner, there's a notion about systems engineering because that's where digital engineering began. I want you to think about engineering in the broad. I want you to think about science, mathematics, analysis, all of the things that we can do with the advent of high performance computing and just everyday desktops. That's the type of world that we're trying to shift our development and capability development for the warfighter today. We're trying to move it into the digital world. In many cases, it's already there. I know at least one of you in the office I've known for, Annie, how long have we known each other? We don't want to say. Annie and I have known each other for a very long time, and it started with modeling and simulation. Modeling and simulation certainly operates in a digital world. But there's one that I'm going to talk about what the characteristics are. There's now the need, the desire, the request, the use of a continuum of these digital capabilities where human in the loop is no longer the problem. Fat fingering data in, moving things from one system to another is no longer the problem, right? We want to move into this wonderful world. I don't operate like that myself. I wish I did. But we want to try to set the stage with the standards, with the processes, with the training for the people who are coming up next, right? One of these days, I'm really going to go away. I really am, I promise. But until that time, what can we do to get a baseline of support together? Let's see, what else? We want to change everything about the way we do our acquisition business, right? Acquisition is an engineering problem, believe it or not, right? Takes rigor, takes science, takes mathematics, little bit of human behavior modification. I get all that, right? But for the most part, if you can execute it in a computer, you can make it part of this digital continuum, right? It's all about how do we consider it, and then what characteristics do we need to put on it? And I want you to consider a few things. We test systems now virtually. We test systems now using simulated activities. We have for years. We have since I joined the government. But test is one part, evaluation is another part, right? How does evaluation follow on from your test data? Can I do it without fat fingering anything, Okay, and I apologize for using the old terms. I am an old person. So that's how we want to transform the acquisition process, right? Along with that, will we transform training? Training has been digital forever, right? It is already a digital process. So maybe I don't need to transform it, but can I take what is available to me as a digital artifact or a digital entity in training and bring it back into my capability development? Can I use those training systems to help me gather data for analysis and for evaluation, extrapolate out the small test cases that I have? Think about now about all of those things being on the wire, right? Can we get there today? Boy, I wish we could. We need standards, both big S and little s standards, to help us get there. We can no longer live with ad hocery if we're going to bring the capability, accelerate the capability development to the warfighter. You can't do that any longer. I'll talk about policy in a minute. Okay, so anybody who knows me know that I had something to do with the digital engineering strategy. So it would be sad for me to do a briefing without the digital engineering strategy, right? I've already redefined it for you. I don't think Dan's here yet. I don't know if Dan's going to do it. By the way, for those of you who don't really know, he used to introduce himself as the person who follows Phil Zimmerman. I'm going to change that paradigm also, and I'm going to call myself the former Dan Hedema, right? And so when y'all see him, make sure you tell him that I said that. I want to talk a little bit about when you step into my digital world, or the person that you're supporting, or your organization's digital world, what are some things that you're going to observe, right? Don't be frightened, right? This is an incredibly creative and dynamic world. I came up, a lot of the words I was using were C words. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a word for quick. I wanted to put CWIK on there, but I didn't think that would fly. So I didn't put it on there, but it's fast, it's rapid. It's a rapidly evolving community. It's changing. That was the closest I could come, but it's changing in ways that we might not expect. It's not just changing what we do, right? It's not just saying, I'm now going to do this data analysis in a high performance computer. We're now starting to question, do I even need to do that data analysis? Do I need to add data analysis? And I'm picking on data analysis because it's one of the things that I'm working on with the Air Force right now. But what else can I bring in now? If theoretically, if I do this in a computer, if I remove some steps, like even simple steps like fat fingering, I gain more resources, not necessarily dollars, but I gain more time. Can I now bring things in to give me more confidence, burn down risk early, more assurance that my system is going to operate as I expect it to operate? Think about that, not just as I require it to operate, but as I expect it to operate. When Katrina McFarland was the ASDA under Frank Kendall, she started a thought process about the F-35. And if the F-35's requirement is to go 500 nautical miles on a tank of gas, and I don't know if it is, but let's assume that it is. If I tested it and it only gets to 497 nautical miles, what does that mean? It means I didn't meet the requirement, but can I still complete the mission? Right, so now we have more ways to bring that mission testing in. Am I going to be able to give the warfighter the capability he needs rather than the capability that he requires? But when I do that, I make the things more complex, right? Complex versus complicated. Complex meaning that the behaviors are not necessarily predictable, right? So we have to be prepared for things to happen that we didn't expect, like failure, right? Fail fast, fail often. We hear that all the time. We're going to do that, but now if I do it in the digital world, perhaps I have less risk to my procurement. Perhaps I have less risk to my build, right? Computational, I already talked about that. That's how part of the new definition that I would give. It's collaborative, but it's collaborative in a way that you might not think about. If I have from the digital engineering strategy, if I have an authoritative source of truth, right? One authoritative source of truth per problem. It could be multiple data sets, right? I don't care how you create it, but one set of things to be declared authoritative. If I have it and I am now updating processes or I am updating data, it's collaborative now, because when somebody needs to get that piece of information, it's available to them. Collaborative in a way that we might not think about. Composable, right? I already talked about bringing things in. That's what makes it ever changing and what makes it complex, right? And again, these are, I'm going to use an older term, and I hope I'm using it right, but these are on the wire composability, right? Think about now about, I would love to have a standard for automatic contract execution, not as a procurement vehicle, but contract execution as an agreement between two processes. What if I could set that up so I would know which coordinate conversion routine actually works with the analysis routine that I have? Why can't we do that? We can, right? Will AI ML be the thing to help us? I don't know, right? I hopefully will be gone. I promise you I'm going to leave eventually, but I hopefully will be gone by then, right? It'll be the next term of people who are going to come up, and those people need to be supported by baseline things that work. It's continuous. I already talked about the continuum, and I apologize for this for anybody who is not a Deep Space Nine fan. Sorry, when I retired, I binged for a while. For those of you who are, Data, I'm sorry, not Data, Odo, right? When Odo goes back to the home world or whatever he calls it, he joins the continuum and he becomes part of this golden sea of stuff that's out there. And then the next thing you know, another body comes up out of it. And it doesn't look like Odo at all. It's something different, right? That's the visual I have for this, but clearly I have to use my imagination and come up with something better. But it is continuous, right? Just because I have data that came from an operational test doesn't mean it's only good for evaluation of that operational test. It's data. And I used to use this phrase all the time, data doesn't have feelings. It doesn't care how it's used. Okay, so we need to take some of the artificialities off of it, right? I believe standards can help us do that. They can help us think about things in their base form. It's convenient, right? Every morning I wake up and the first thing I do, I don't actually turn on the television anymore. I go to my computer and I read Smart News or AP or Reuters or whatever I happen to be in the mood for the day, right? So it's convenient. It's always there for us. We're creative, right? If you give engineers, if you give acquisition specialists the ability to do things with the tools that we have today, I'm going to call them modern, the things that we consider part of life. How many people in this room do not have a cell phone? I rest my case, right? If you give people the comfort level in how to use the technology, they will use it in ways that you might not even think about, right? I used my phone to hammer something into the wall the other day, really mortified my husband. That's not the type of transformation that I'm talking about, but we can be creative in what we do. If you give a person a coordinate conversion routine, how and where are they going to use it, right? Sky's the limit, right? It has to be fit for purpose, so there are some things we need to change. And it's curatable. And I want to talk about this word for a minute. This is done by a friend of mine, part of the CERC. I think Donna is at MIT, but this is Donna Rhodes. And there's a difference between management and curation. Curation is active. It's actively putting things together as opposed to just making sure they're in the right column, in the right alignment, on the right shelf, however you want to talk about it, right? All of the things we have digitally are curatable because computers keep history, and now we know why we did things, why they are there. We know how we can combine them in the future. Michael, I'm not timing myself, so I apologize. But it's more than just techniques. It's more than just science. It's more than just mathematics. There also has to be a cultural change that's going on here. I stole this slide. Actually, I created the slide for some work that I'm doing with Air Force Materiel Command, right? They have Four-Star General Richardson has an initiative called Digital Material Management. And as part of digital material management, he has the AFMC 6 key initiatives, which are listed there, right? And they're what you might think has to happen to every organization, but you can't just change the culture. You can't just develop digital strategies. You actually have to change the organization to be receptive to doing this, right? So we're doing some implementation work for them. But here are the 3 steps that they've laid out. Today, I actually can't read. Oh, today, each element could and does function independently. And they're good at what they do independently. This is the first do no harm problem, right? They are good at what they do. Clearly, we produce product in the Department of Defense. Clearly, we get product to the warfighters, right? Clearly, we sustain it and maintain it, right? So everybody, they can do it independently. Tomorrow, digital is going to enable us to be able to think about, when I make this change, what does it mean here? Because it happens instantaneously, right? The amount of time it takes electrons to flow from one site to another, right? Instantaneously. Digital enables each element to consider how it is impacted by other elements, right? But then the day after tomorrow, we are inherently digital, right? Everybody wakes up in the morning and they turn on their computer instead of the television because it's convenient and it's there, right? We are inherently digital in that each element is no longer hampered by functionality, right? Because we're not necessarily sharing the functionality, but we're sharing the interchange between the functions. Each element is inherently digital because it has situational understanding of where it is and the context in which it was operating. So if you can think about that in a totally interconnected world, right? I think Will Roper, now at Astari, talked about the Matrix, right? I am not a big fan of the movie, right? It scared me a little bit. But that's kind of what we're talking about here, but I'm not talking about plugging it into my brain. Maybe Elon Musk is, but I'm not talking about plugging it into my brain, right? But I'm talking about plugging it into the central process brains of everybody else that I have to work with. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could cost that which we are actually building? We ran a workshop at the CERC where we actually brought members of the lead director of AFCA in to talk with the T&E community, right? Could she use the information that we're getting from our test, if we could get it to her, if she could access it, to actually get up-to-date cost estimates? Wouldn't that be awesome? How much better, I'm not going to say easier, but how much better would our procurement process be? And when we make the procurement better, what other challenges does that bring for us, right? We have to be prepared for that. All right, and then things to keep in mind, right? In a digital world, program managers know what their job is, right? And whether they do or not, you probably don't want to be told, right? So you got to consider the culture. I used to be a program manager. I totally get it. We're not viewing systems as an entire interrelated organization, but maybe if we view them as cause and effect, that will help open up how we can better improve the collaboration. Change is a learning process. The digital community and you, when you step into it, are going to learn every day. I used to tell my children that if you don't learn something every day, you die. It was an interesting conversation starter around the kitchen table until my one son told me that, Mom, asked me, Mom, why do we have to do this? And I said, well, because if you don't learn everything, you have to die. And he was 5. And my husband shot me a look like, I just can't believe you said that, right? But you will learn something every day, right? I don't think you're going to die. But we have to learn to evolve. And maybe we learn that we don't like to do things. Maybe we learn that it doesn't work. Maybe we learn that when we do this, it fails. But we learn something every day. All systems, people, organizations, processes, elements, capabilities exist as part of a larger environment. You have to understand that environment and the context they live in order how to make them perform better. And lastly, this isn't going to be quick. Digital change sometimes means that you have to allow one element of an organization or a process or a system to exist as it does in order to have another group take a step forward. And then eventually everybody will move together. If you take somebody who has a tried and true process, and I apologize for all the configuration managers in the room because you're one of my favorite targets. But if I have a configuration manager that's comfortable doing their configuration management job, I don't want to change their job. I'm going to change the tools that they do their job with, change one variable at a time. What I have seen when I've done it with configuration management, I've also done it with infrastructure people. When you change the tools that they're working with, but not the job, get them comfortable using the new tools, they will take the tools and evolve them themselves. Right? People are very smart, and we need to give them credit for the smartness that they have, not try to stump the chump or dumb it down for them. Allow their creativity to come out. And so it's going to take a while. It's not necessarily going to be instantaneous. Okay, so I've talked a lot about, hopefully you get a sense for what it's like to try to live in a world of culture change and process change. And if you want to see more of what's happening in the digital engineering world, I have listed a few places you can look and a few places you can get involved, right? I'm a member of NDIA and COSI. I'm a member of AIAA. It's kind of an occupational hazard when you do this kind of culture change, right? But and I did these, I think, in alphabetical order. I did. So I'm not trying to instill any kind of do this one first. AIAA has a digital engineering integration committee. They have a big conference every year in Orlando. Annie, you'll be in Florida. In Orlando called SciTech. They took 25 technical conferences and they brought them together. This year they had over 6,000 participants. One of the committees that functions is a digital engineering integration committee. There's another one on transformation of systems engineering. So there's a lot of work being done at looking at how to shift all that work to digital. And they're primarily aviation and aeronautics. Department of Air Force Digital Transformation Office, one of my boss, when I do the work on DMM, they have a digital process. They have a digital change page, right? Go to DAFDTO.com, gives them a little bit more flexibility. You can see all the work that we're doing, including how our industry partners are engaging and helping them. Dan Hedema will be here later today. He owns the DBOC and the DE Modeling and Simulation COP. That is available from cto.mil and then dboc.org. In COSI has a digital engineering information exchange group where they are looking at what do these artifacts need to contain in order to be able to maintain that collaboration if I drop it in an ASOT and somebody else needs to use it, right? How do they know what it is? NDIA has a systems engineering division and an emerging technologies institute that are both working in changes in these areas. Object management group is doing standards in this area, and CERC, this group that I work for, is also doing. By the way, this graphic came from a company called Gaping Void. If you're interested in more about how to do culture change, I would encourage you to sign up for their emails. They actually do some pretty good stuff. Michael stood up. I take it that means I'm done. Hopefully I've kind of given you a glimpse into the chaos that we live in, right? As we try to change this to digital. What will calm the chaos? Standards, consistency, right? Rigor. And I ask you to get involved so you can understand how best to help us. Okay.
Great. Thank you. We could take time for one question. Anyone?
Yes. Oh, dang.
In the back.
I'll be here all day too, by the way, so.
Yeah, Rich Forselius, Lockheed Martin. I think it's important for us to recognize where are the efficiency gains here. You know, what is there to gain? How can we analyze that quantitatively? In other words, why do it otherwise? But that's a huge challenge for us.
Right.
Do you have any comments on that? Because when we try to sell the whole concept, of a full digital transformation, there's an investment upfront, like any new technology investment.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I'm going to start you have to look at an NCOSE Insights journal on how to measure the effectivity of digital engineering application. I don't care how many people are trained. If they can't use it, I haven't done them a favor. I don't care how many tools are out there. If people don't use them, we're not doing ourselves any favors, right? In all honesty, digital engineering came out in 2018. We are still in the beginning of this, right? So what to measure because we're trying to get ahead of the curve as what the leading indicators would be, we are just starting to discover those ourselves. That's a terrible answer, but it's the truth, right? So I would urge you to talk to your service partners, to talk to Dan Hedema's group. They are connecting the positive stories about efficiencies that were gained. And I appreciate the fact that you use the word efficiencies and not cost savings, because I don't think we're going to save the Department of Defense any money. And here's how I know. Does anybody know one program manager that ever returned money to the federal coffers? I rest my case. We will never see cost savings. At least I won't before I die. Right? But we will see efficiencies so I can use the money more appropriately. It's a terrible answer. I apologize, but that's the state of where we are. And I'll be here all day. Okay?
All right, thank you.